I think we need to do a better job of understanding each other and plugging each other in where we can help our clients and prospective clients to solve for issues that may not directly impact us, but make a world of difference for them.
Welcome to Self-Funded with Spencer, sponsored by Pareto Health, ClaimDoc, and PlanSight. Whether we're discussing innovative new healthcare strategies, exposing hidden revenue streams or misaligned incentives, or even just cheering on the next generation of this industry, we promise you that you're going to learn something. So thank you for joining us for another great conversation about the future of healthcare. So I'm here with Madison Baker. Welcome, Madison, to the podcast. Great to see you.
Thank you. Great to see you too.
How do we get connected? Remind me the story there.
So funny. So I reached out to you. We had never met each other, but I reached out to you on LinkedIn because I wanted to see if you knew any coaches that had experience in insurance.
Yeah.
And you had connected me with Andy Neary, and I started working with Andy. And then after that, I was like, I really should meet Spencer. And funny enough, I actually, now that I think about it, Will Russ, who is your suit guy, I think I originally reached out to him, and he's the one who told me to reach out to you. So it was kind of a game of telephone to
That's funny. That's funny. Well, yeah, I'm glad. Well, so yeah, I know both of those guys really well. Andy is somebody probably for the last 3 or 4 years I've followed pretty intently, and then fortunately been able to develop a real friendship with him, right?
Yeah.
Because he laid out the blueprint for me for creating content. I saw from afar what he was doing, and I started listening to what he teaches and coaches about, and tried to apply that to my own life. And it sounds like that's what you've done as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
I mean, when you and I met, I had zero brand presence. I wasn't doing anything on LinkedIn other than maybe sharing an article once every month.
Yeah.
And now I have nearly 10,000 connections on LinkedIn. Yeah. I'm posting daily, all organic content made by myself, and it's night and day different.
Well, two compliments I have to give you. One, from that meeting a year or so ago when we met, I think we had coffee at La Finca,
Yeah, we
right?
did.
Yeah. So you actually did it, which I can't tell you how many people I've talked to who are interested in using content for their career and talk all about what they're going to do and have a plan, and literally you'll see them do 0 things, and you go, well, that's 95% of the people that I talk to just won't take that first step. So kudos to you, you did it.
Thank
and 2,
you.
the bigger compliment, and the reason I reached back out is the substance of your posts are fantastic.
Thank you.
We were talking about your process, and I can tell you're a writer, but every time I see one of your posts, it'll get me to stop and I read it and go, wow, really interesting. I can tell you put a lot of thought into it. And so as we get into that stuff and we talk about volume of content and ChatGPT, I just want to give you kudos, is because not only you're consistent, but you're writing consistently great stuff. And I think that's why you've grown so quickly.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Well, cool. So Madison, before we get into what you do, and you're the second person that is in the P&C side of the house. So we're going to establish.
Special.
Yeah, you and Ross Connor are the only people I've had on in 150 some odd episodes that are in the P&C world. And so we'll weave that in and how that applies here. But I want to tell a story of something happened yesterday, and that applies to this episode, where Nathaniel and I were brainstorming of kind of new ideas. And I pitched him this idea of what if we had every episode, we had an episode word of the day. And we would ask the guest, he would come up with it, he'd tell me live on air, and then we'd ask the guest to try to weave in that word at some point, and it would be a little bit of a challenge or a game. Well, the reason I'm telling it to you now is because as I was brainstorming this and we decided if you were willing to play along to be the first, I said the word that made me think of this was the word adroit, because I heard Dr. Eric Bricker use that in a podcast review the other day, and I thought, man, that's such a good word. I don't use it anymore, adroit. And I started down this path of this idea. The crazy thing is Nathaniel picked the word adroit. He told me that. And it's how serendipitous, because he didn't know, I didn't know he was going to pick that word. Out of a million words he could have picked, he picked the word that actually was the reason why I had this idea in the first place.
I think this is God telling me that he wants me to work adroit into my regular vocabulary.
If you don't use it regularly after this, then shame on you, because you should. But I think it also tells me serendipitously, maybe we should mine this idea and do it for a little while. And hopefully the audience agrees. So anyways, long-winded way to say, hey, we're going to ask you to use the word adroit in describing what you do. But Nathaniel, real quick, why don't you tell me what the textbook definition of adroit is?
Having or showing skill, cleverness, or resourcefulness in handling situations.
Okay, so having skill or showing resources or cleverness in certain situations, is that what you said? Handling certain. So having skill or cleverness in handling certain situations. So I can think of like, oh, they adroitly did that. They skillfully did that thing.
Okay.
Okay, so no, you don't have to do immediately, and there's the challenges. Can you weave it in? But Madison, what do you actually do for your career? What is your job?
I am a risk management consultant for Marsh McLennan Agency. So that's a fancy term for helping businesses with their property and casualty insurance. So the opposite side of the house to benefits, I manage risk for buildings, people, financial risk, anything related to running a business. I insure that.
Do you do that adroitly?
I do it very adroitly.
Well, now, we're going to try to randomly, I would say, organically bring that up, the word adroit, in a sentence later. But just wanted to kind of play a little game to keep the podcast fresh for everybody and kind of fresh for myself, too, if you don't mind. So, so you're managing risk on the other side of the house. You're managing kind of the non-health, accident and health-related risk for businesses. And I want to unpack kind of what that might look like, evaluating, underwriting, risk management, et cetera. But first, let's go back in your story. And how did you get into this business in the first place? Like, who are you? Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? All that fun stuff.
Well, I grew up in Plano, so have always lived in Plano other than going to Georgia for school.
Okay.
One of four girls. It's really funny.
Okay.
My dad did something very wrong in a past life. I don't know what it was, but...
Where are you in the order of the four
I'm
girls?
the third.
You're the third.
I'm the third. And it's funny, my sisters bullied me growing up because they said that I was meant to be a boy. And I was my dad's token son. And so I got married last year, and my dad, in his 45-minute long wedding speech, talked about how I was the son he never had. And it's funny because my dad actually was in risk management as well, but not the risk management that I do. So he worked for a company called Accenture, small little consulting firm. And he ran their risk management practice. But the risk management that he was doing was really sexy financial mechanisms like interest rate risk and hedging commodities and utilities pricing. And it was very high level, nothing to do with insurance. But when I decided to go to the University of Georgia, we went over the business school degrees, and I knew I didn't want to go into accounting, not great with numbers. Marketing wasn't really my thing. Didn't want to do just business management. And he saw risk management was a degree, and he was like, oh my gosh, they have a degree for risk management now. This is incredible. You can follow in my footsteps. I'll get you an internship at Accenture. My little son, my protege, is going to follow in my footsteps.
Were you a tomboy? Where did this come from?
Oh, I was such a tomboy.
Okay, all right.
It's funny now looking at me because I certainly don't exude tomboy. But I was like a tri-sport athlete. My dad's dream was for me to play basketball in college. And actually as a freshman, Tulane came to check out our point guard. She was a junior at the time, and I was varsity as a freshman. And the Tulane scouts actually were seeing me, and they were like, "Hey, we're interested in this girl. We want to watch. Wow. We want to watch her career." And so my dad, the light bulb went off, and he just thought that that's what I was going to pursue. I chose a completely different route and broke his heart a little bit, but.
I think you're doing okay now.
I think I am,
But you're one of those rare people that actually got a risk management degree, which is, I know those degrees exist, and I didn't realize Georgia was one of those schools that offers it, but it's still relatively rare that people are intentionally going down the path of insurance and starting in college to pursue it. Or did you even know it would be insurance, or did you think it was more like what your dad did?
I thought it was going to be what my dad did. And so I remember my first week of school, I had all my intro classes, so intro to finance, intro to accounting, intro to risk management. And I called my father after those classes, and I said, "Hey, Dad, so I had all my intro classes, and this intro to risk management class was homeowners insurance 101.
Okay.
And he was like, "Change your major." He was like, "Change to finance or change to MIS. I don't care. You're not going into insurance."
Yeah.
And
that's hilarious.
I said to him, I was like, "Dad, actually, there were 300 people in my intro to finance class, and there were 30 people in my intro to insurance class. And so I think the opportunity is here. Like, if I just have to outshine these 30 people.
What was his aversion to insurance? Like, what was that?
I think it was typically everyone's aversion, right? Yeah. I mean, it's the one thing you have to buy that you get punished for using. And then I think that there's kind of this negative connotation with insurance.
Totally, yeah, I totally agree.
And I think he wrongfully had that belief, and he thought I was just going to be slinging homeowners policies and auto
Well, did you find yourself having a personal interest in it other than like great recognition? Kudos for you for recognizing far less competition. So maybe easier to stand out right away. But like, what about the actual subject matter? Did you enjoy it, or was it a necessary evil to get to the degree?
If I'm being completely honest,
yeah, please.
I was not interested in it. And candidly, over the course of those 4 years, I had no idea what I was going to do with the degree. It wasn't until my senior year where I took a corporate risk management class, and we got to work with Chick-fil-A out of Atlanta and got to see kind of how risk management plays a role in the ecosystem of business, that I actually was able to envision what a career might look like. But I can't say that I was passionate or enamored by the idea of insurance. Yeah. I think the opportunity that I thought it presented was the most exciting facet of it. And of course, that's proven to be true.
Well, so when you left school with this risk management degree, where'd you go next? Did you actively pursue a job? Did somebody recruit you?
So that's the thing about the risk management degree at Georgia. It's the #1 program in the country. So you have 20 job offers by the time that you leave.
Hear that, kids? Go get a risk management degree at Georgia. Okay.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, and I think the universities have realized that there's going to be, and the companies too have realized there's going to be this great resignation in the insurance industry, right? It's impeding, and there's not infrastructure in place to backfill all of those roles, right? So a lot of universities are picking up this risk management degree, and because the caliber of Georgia's program is so strong, and it was one of the first programs that was developed, you are considered top tier coming out of college from that program. And so I had offers from a lot of different companies, and it's interesting. I actually interned with MHBT while I was in college. My neighbor was a man named Dan Browning, and he was the president of MHBT. He has since passed, but he was one of just the absolute best men in this industry. Him and Bill Henry, just the company that they ran at MHBT, which is now MMA, which I'm now a part of. It's kind of all come full circle. That was really my first taste of the broker side.
Okay.
And then went back to school and thought, I need to work for one of the big guys. Like I think, I had offers from Aon and Marsh, and I was like, I think I want to work for one of the big guys. Had no idea that MMA was going to then acquire MHBT, but I decided to go work for Aon after college.
But you said you went back to school.
Yeah, so I interned with MHBT my junior going into senior year. Okay. Went back to school to finish my senior year, and then had those offers and inevitably decided to join Aon after that.
So you did you complete a master's degree then, or no?
No, I didn't.
Okay, no. Very cool. You got a master's on the job, which is what I decided to do as well. So, before we get into the progression of your career, I got to ask, what do you know now that you didn't know then about insurance, or what has changed in your perspective of kind of what you perceive this industry to be versus what the college kid thought it was?
Oh my gosh. I mean, what we do is so critically important. Business could not exist without insurance. Business owners couldn't sleep at night. I mean, how could you ever leave your business without fear that it's going to potentially burn down overnight, or you're going to lose everything that you've poured your blood, sweat, and tears into if you didn't have the peace of mind that insurance delivers? I think another thing that I've realized is every day is so different. You're not just reading policies and pushing out certificates. You're talking with business owners about the issues that they're facing. You're coming up with solutions. You're solving problems. You're delivering peace of mind. You get to have these conversations and have an integral line of communication with these entrepreneurs and business owners that all have different challenges that they're facing, and you get to be a part of solving that. Yep. And so there is not 2 days that look alike, and I think that's what's exciting.
I would say it's infinitely variable.
Yeah.
I would agree with you. I mean, my day this morning was putting together a presentation deck for advanced self-funded strategies, called somebody about renewals. Now I have a conversation with you over coffee, and we get into property and casualty. I'm going to jump off and run a webinar about captives. It's like even hour by hour, it can differ pretty considerably. And I'm one who enjoys that, right? I don't like to sit at a desk and do one thing repeatedly. Some people are masters at that and love that. I think that's just not my personality. But it is so much different than I perceived insurance to be somebody selling your grandma a life insurance policy. That's literally what I thought. Now that I know what I know, right, being on the other side, even though I bitch and moan about how much my homeowner's policy now is, if it burned down tomorrow and I had to replace my house, I would be so thankful that that policy existed, right? Same with your car, same with, God forbid, something happens and you do pass away and you have a life insurance policy that gets passed to your family and keeps them afloat. Like, we can complain all day long about the premiums, but it's there for a reason, and insurance is one of the oldest industries in the world for a reason. And I'm just glad I know what I know now so that I can communicate to other people, hopefully, that are listening, and young folks especially, go, look, think of this, consider this as a potential career path. Pareto Health is the manager of the largest employee benefits group captive in the United States. And it's also now the main sponsor of the Self-Funded with Spencer podcast. I chose to partner with Pareto Health for 3 main reasons. Number 1, their dedication to improving the world of health benefits. Number 2, their mission to reduce volatility and to make self-funding simple for mid-sized employers. And number 3, the strength and scale of their program. With over 2,300 member groups and more than $1 billion of stop-loss premium under management, Pareto Health is the most robust solution of its kind in the country, period. Stay tuned for more information, because I'm sure I'll be featuring them on an episode of the podcast very soon. Visit Pareto Health at paretohealth.com or follow them on LinkedIn to stay up to date on the latest news and developments. So, all right, so back on your career path, started at Aon. What were you doing there at Aon?
So at Aon, they had a training program that was like a 3-year training program, and you sat in different positions over the course of those 3 years. Okay. My experience was a little bit different, because about halfway in to my first year at Aon, they started this pilot program where they had chosen 12 different people throughout our region, and they were essentially training us on how to be producers, how to read 10Ks and 10Qs, what to look for in quarterly earnings reports, what to listen for in news outlets related to businesses, and how to assess risk and kind of think ahead as pertaining to what businesses need and where they could potentially be exposed, and apply solutions to that. So it was a pilot program, first time ever the company had done it, and I learned all of those things, and that was the most excited that I had been at my entire point in that career. I was usually behind a desk, putting together spreadsheets or presentations. I wasn't really client facing, and then I get this opportunity, and it was like,
did you want to be a producer, or did you realize once you learned about it that that's maybe who you were?
I had no idea what a producer was, because I was so far removed from the producer in that role that I was traditionally in. And so when they pegged me as this person that they wanted to develop as a producer, I was like, what's a producer?
Yeah. What is that? Yeah.
I would think of the guy that was, not really in the office all that much, golfing, running around 1,000,000 miles a minute. And that's kind of what I knew about a producer, but I didn't know what they did kind of day in and day out. And so after we learned all of those skills, we had a regional production meeting where all of our regional producers, I think it was like 100 some odd people, came to the Dallas office, and one person from our group was chosen to present to all of those producers on 5 businesses that we'd researched, the opportunities that we found within these businesses, how we could help them, and what solutions we would apply.
Okay, cool.
And I was chosen from the group to present to that group of producers. And it was certainly overwhelming and scary, but when I got up there and I did my presentation, I'd never felt so invigorated.
Really?
I was so excited. I was like, wait, I'm giving all these producers all of the work that I've done, and they're going to go out and sell this business. I want to sell this business.
Yeah.
And it was,
that's cool.
It was kind of the turning point for me. Like, I think I could see myself doing this. And after that meeting, several producers came up to me and they were like, hey, you're going to be really great at this. Like, I think that I'll take you under my wing, and we'll do this and that. And ultimately, Aon is large, publicly traded brokerage firm that's going after Fortune 500 business, right? At the time, I was 23 years old, and I couldn't really envision myself chasing Fortune 500 business. I needed credibility. I needed years of experience to do that, and ultimately, time was not on my side at that point in my career. And that's when I got recruited by another firm to go into a role of middle market production, and it was the perfect fit for me. And that was my first taste of production.
And I would say that's a very adroit or astute recognition of, at 23, no matter how smart you are, it's very difficult to go convince a CEO that's 60 years old that's running a Fortune 500 business that you know more about what they need to do to solve their business-related problems than them, right? And so it's like, who is this kid? No matter, they might impress me with everything they say, but like, what do you know, right? What do you know, kid? Go learn some things, right? So that ageism, I think, does work in reverse, especially as a producer. It could be very, very difficult and very challenging. So how did you get traction? Like, how did you start really realizing you could do it and start earning some business and then building a blog?
So I did what any entrepreneur does, right? I created a business plan. So when I joined the next firm that I was with for several years, I thought of every single business owner that I possibly had a connection to. It was like the 7 degrees of Madison Baker, right? I wrote out every single business, every single person that was within my scope of connection, right? And I built a strategic business plan around that and them, right? And the strategy there was if people don't know you, they can't buy from you. And people that already know you are probably the best people to start with. And so I recognized really early on that building a pipeline cold for a 23-year-old getting into this business probably was going to be the slower route for me to take. So I wanted to cut that learning curve in half and really just start with the people who I felt I would have an opportunity to develop a deeper relationship with that may or may not lead to new business, but at least it was people that were already within my atmosphere that I could connect with.
Well, that's really smart, but some of these people are probably second, third level connections. So how were you able to use, even if it was a tangential connection, how were you able to learn, like get in the door with them and get them to listen to you again at 23? Like, what did you do to do that?
So my dad is a very, very smart man. He's my hero, and he taught me everything that I know. And he was the very first person that shared with me that in order for people to want to spend time with me or to take time out of their day to meet with me, I needed to offer something of value.
Okay.
So I couldn't be coming to them asking for their time purely to pick their brain or learn about them. That's such a weak way of trying to build a relationship. And so I learned early on how to bring value outside of the scope of work that I was doing. So I wasn't leading with insurance a lot of the time.
Okay.
I am one of those people that prepares to a fault. So I'm going to learn everything about the people that I'm meeting with. I'm going to learn everything about their business, and I'm going to find a way to bring value to them outside of what I do, because inevitably the conversation is going to come back to insurance in one way, shape, or form. But if I can bring value to them by either introducing them to someone that can do business with them or helping them solve a problem that has nothing to do with insurance, my opportunity to build a relationship and an inevitable partnership with them is so much higher, right?
Well, two things I noticed about you describing that. One, you gave value first without any expectation of return. And I think that's just a universal quality that especially salespeople should look to embody. Just give people value and have no desire or concern of whether it comes back. Inevitably it does, but don't give it for that reason. So give that value first. The second thing, and I think we were talking about this off camera, in order to be interesting, you need to be interested. And what you did was you researched to, like you said, almost to a fault. But I'm sure if I'm that business owner that go, wow, who is this person that knows everything about my business and is coming up with 3 things I can do to solve very unique problems to my business? Who are they? Like, who are you, right? And like, now I want to know what you do. And so by being that interested to that extent in them, by extension, they're going to turn around and be interested in you.
Certainly. And I never hid the fact that I was young and probably didn't know all that there was to know about insurance. I was very candid up front. When the conversation inevitably did lead to insurance, my strategy was to bring in the best people that I could, the industry experts, the professionals who had been in this business much longer than I had, that bring immense value to this business, and say, hey, I may not have all the answers right now, or I may not be the one that's executing on the solutions and strategies that we propose, but you can always count on me to surround you with the right people. You can always count on me to care more about your business than any other broker in this town is going to care about your business, and I'm going to be available to you because this matters to me.
Yeah. And then you deliver on those things, right? Right. Like at the end of the day, it's easy to say something as a salesperson, but when you do it and probably go well beyond expectations of delivering as well, now you've proved it, you've earned credibility.
Yep.
PlanSight is a complete game changer in the world of insurance brokering. As a broker, you know how time-consuming and error-prone the traditional RFP process can be. But what if I told you there's a better way? PlanSight is the only end-to-end RFP solution on the market made specifically for benefits agencies. It's like having a superpower that gets you an average of 8 to 10 hours back per employer renewal per year. And the best part? PlanSight supports all carriers, all funding types, and all group sizes for over 20 different benefits. If you're ready to make your RFP process faster, more efficient, and more profitable, it's time to call PlanSight. Visit plansight.com now to book a free demo and discover the future of insurance renewals.
But that's back in the day when you were sort of doing business the hard way still, I would say. So progress me forward into your career at MMA, and then we can talk about specifically what you do, and then I want to get into kind of your social media career as well, if you will.
Of course.
But let's get into MMA now.
Yeah, of course. So I built a great book of business at my prior firm, had a ton of success, and it was a fantastic experience. Ultimately, when MMA recruited me, there's only really one reason, or maybe a couple reasons, that you would make a change like that and walk away from a book of business, right? Because it's really hard to leave your clients.
And you basically start over, right?
Oh, you start completely over. You have typically a 2-year non-compete. You can't tell your clients you're leaving. You can't talk to them. So that's a really big decision to make and a really hard decision to make. But ultimately, we've been in this hard market for what feels like a lifetime now. And business owners and executives are extremely frustrated. They're looking for the better mousetrap. They're looking for more creative thinking. They're looking for alternative options to finance their risk. And then it becomes a decision for you as a consultant, how and where can I best deliver for my clients? What resources do I have at my disposal? What are the caliber of my teams? How can I problem solve quicker and more efficiently for my clients? And when you have to ask yourself those questions, it's a tough decision to make to walk away from something. But if you're running towards something amazing that's going to be great for you and great for your clients, it's always going to be the right decision. And so when I decided to join MMA, it was because of 3 things. The resources that we have at MMA are second to none. We are industry leaders in innovation. The solutions that we can bring to our clients are second to none. And I wanted to have access to that level of expertise and talent. 2, our culture and the caliber of our teams and the way in which we take care of our teams is like nothing I've ever seen before. It's interesting because typically, as you see in our industry, we have a lot of M&A activity, a lot of the smaller agencies that are being acquired by larger firms, private equity money pouring into this industry, and there's always a concern that it's going to change the fabric of the underlying agency and what made them great, right? Because they're getting acquired because they're doing something right. And so MHBT was one of those firms that had a stellar reputation, teams that could go up against the best of them in the industry. And there was a fear that maybe that would change when MMA acquired them. It's funny looking back because I worked at MHBT back in the day. And when I came back and started talking with MMA, I was like, nothing has changed.
Yeah, it felt like home probably.
The same people are still here. We just have a new logo and better resources, and we still take care of our people the same way that we did back in the day. And the fact that still exists, that culture is still there. We call it people like us.
People like us, okay.
Yeah, the PLUs, Bill Henry kind of coined that term. It's really amazing.
Well, you mentioned three things. So you got resources, culture,
Yep.
and what's the third one then?
The opportunity to influence and lead the next generation of leaders.
Yeah.
So a lot of brokerage firms are so hyper focused on growth, and of course we are too. But I wanted to bring value and make an impact in this industry and into my company in a way outside of the numbers that I'm putting on a scoreboard, right?
Yeah.
And so they were the first firm that I had really been offered the opportunity to have an eventual leadership position with. And as I've seen the struggles in this industry, we have a 20% success rate for new producers.
That's it, 20%.
It's terrible.
Okay, so one out of 5 succeeds, 4 to 5 fails.
Yeah,
wow. Okay.
and it's terrible. We need to drastically improve. And so if I can play a part as someone who was a new producer and did succeed in bringing that percentage up and helping more people succeed in this role, that was something I was super excited about.
Yeah, I mean, all those things that you described resonate with me, and probably reasons why I picked Pareto myself. But it's like, I do agree, I think, with your third point the most is like, everybody talks about a talent gap. There's a generational gap with the folks that have been leading these organizations forever that are eventually going to exit. And there a backfill of talent that's ready and prepared to take over as the next generation. Yeah. And so there's a lamenting of like, hey, who is going to be that? That's why SIA Future Leaders exists. It's like to identify people that could be groomed and built to be those future leaders as well. But there's a recognition that there's almost like this age and generational gap, that there's not enough people that are prepared to be that next generation. So I love even the fact that you've decided, I want to wear that mantle and I want to do it myself, which I think that speaks volumes to you as a person. So now why don't we get into kind of what your daily life looks like? I think you've given us a lot of awesome background in like how you sell and how you prepare. And I do even want to hear what it was like to rebuild a new block of business again. But then let's get into your daily life. So somebody that might be interested in going into this field would have a sense of what it would be to actually do this job.
Certainly. Every day looks different, but my lifesaver in rebuilding this book and rebuilding my pipeline has been to have a method to the madness.
Okay.
So it's really difficult when you're your own boss, because that means the person looking at you in the mirror is your accountability partner, and it's really easy to lie to that person in the mirror. And so I spent so much of my early career kind of having a chaotic daily and weekly schedule where it was like, okay, maybe I'll do some calls this morning, but I don't have a list together. So now I have to put a list together, and that's going to take some time. And then I'll do the calls, and then maybe a couple people will answer, and maybe I'll log a meeting. Then I'll send some emails. And there was really no method to the madness.
Okay.
And so now I'm very regimented and very scheduled. So I have calendar blocking on my calendar each week where I reserve time for prospecting, for writing.
Okay.
And we'll get into that later on my writing schedule, but LinkedIn prospecting, meetings with clients. I essentially schedule every piece of time in my week, or else it won't get done, right? And then I have a measuring system for myself at the end of each day. Did I accomplish X, Y, Z? And if I didn't, that becomes a weekly goal, right? And if I don't achieve that in that weekly goal, then I have to have a one-on-one with myself. Where did I fall short here? Are my expectations too high, or do I need to find a way to make this work? Because another thing is, this job can oftentimes feel like it's a 24/7 job,
I was saying,
right?
it could probably consume your personal life too.
It certainly does, and that's happened to me in the past. It's actually impacted my health, and so once I realized, like, I need to have parameters around this. One, so that I can get the most out of my days, but two, so that I can prioritize myself and my family and my peace of mind and my health, like all of us do. But so to answer your question, the days look a little different, but it's fun because you're running your own business within the business. So you get to decide what you do, and then you get to edit it. If cold calling's not your thing, try building a brand on LinkedIn and see how that works.
Yeah.
It's certainly, you have to be able to adapt and kind of change your methods.
Well, so what does a typical sort of prospecting or sales call look like? Like when you're going to these businesses and feel like you can help, what are some very common problems that you can identify and you think you can solve for them?
Well, of course, the number one complaint and concern that we hear right now is the rising cost of insurance, as you're hearing on your side too.
Oh yeah, everybody complains about healthcare inflation and fully insured renewals and blah, 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 which is rightfully so, but that's almost all we hear is noise about cost.
Yeah.
Constant,
so it's no different on our side.
Okay.
And while there is no silver bullet necessarily to solve for the rising costs, what we can do, and what most businesses in the middle market that are struggling with these things may not be getting, is alternative strategies around managing risk.
Okay.
So a lot of people think that insurance brokers are just middlemen to the insurance marketplace. So our job is kind of a necessary evil in the ecosystem of insurance. Company has to work with broker for broker to then go to carrier, and then becomes this mailing system, almost like passing information back and forth, right? That's a conduit to the marketplace. There's so much more that we can provide to businesses to make an impact to their bottom line. So that might look like conducting some analytics and benchmarking on their program to find the best program structure that makes the most sense for them. Because if you ask a business owner what their appetite for risk is, they're not going to know how to answer that question, because they don't know what it looks like if they retained different levels of risk within their balance sheet. You have to show them with their own data, their own losses, what it might look like and what it would produce for their bottom line to look at different program structures, whether that be captive or alternative risk financing layers, or just raising deductibles. You would be shocked at the amount of business owners who have never heard about those different structures and opportunities.
Well, and I wouldn't be shocked. I'd be just sitting in the position I'm in, but maybe just somebody that doesn't deal in the world of self-insurance and captives on the benefit side. I'm still I've gotten sort of almost numb to how such a low percentage of consultants understand self-insurance, and then let alone understand captives, right? So it probably wouldn't be that shocked, but it's surprising to me that if you know what you know and I know what I know, going, how does everybody not know this? How are people not thinking about, well, for us, we constantly talk about benefits typically are the second biggest line item on companies' P&L, especially healthcare, right? The healthcare expenditures. And so they buy these things so inefficiently, and they think about it so little, yet it costs them so much money. And you would look at that and go, these two things don't compute in my brain. It's like when you have a bad equation in Excel and you get the error response instead of an answer, you go, this isn't computing in my brain. How did we get here? So does frustration ever enter your mind, or confusion of how somebody would buy the way that they've been buying in the past?
Absolutely. And I believe as an industry, we've conditioned buyers to buy the way that they buy and view us insurance brokers as they do. And so to an extent, it's not their fault. It's our industry's fault. And brokers for so many years have gotten away with just year after year renewing policies as is, kind of on autopilot, not really offering any strategic advisory services, not actually helping the clients manage their risk. They're just transferring the risk, and they're, on autopilot and allowing that to happen. And so because business owners don't know what they don't know, nothing is good nor bad, but by comparison, you have to have an understanding that sometimes you're going to go into businesses and they're going to have no idea what you're talking about. And you're going to have to find a way to explain these complex solutions and opportunities for them in a way that they can understand, and then show them the math and help them make an informed business decision, because they don't know what they don't know. So yes, it's frustrating. When I walked into a business last year that was spending about $1.2 million on their property and casualty insurance. Guaranteed cost, absolutely should not have been guaranteed cost. In your world, it's fully insured, right?
Yeah, but we call it a guaranteed cost.
Oh, okay.
I would say either prepaid insurance or fixed or guaranteed cost. Same words. Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah.
So we're going in and we're like, what is going on here? I mean, they are just trading dollars with the insurance company. We found an opportunity to save them 6 figures easy right off the bat, first renewal. Yeah. And it was just by showing them, here are your losses within this loss layer. If we can retain this within the balance sheet, allocate some funds so that we can pre-fund for that loss layer, and then create a safety program, protocols and procedures to drive down your claims costs. This is money that's going back into your business. How many widgets would you have to sell in order to make up this number? And it was like the light bulb went off, and they were frustrated that for years they had no idea that this opportunity existed.
You did, you taught them to think a different way.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like it's that whole idea is like, if you want a different outcome, you have to make different choices, right? And you taught them to think differently about their retention and the way that they insure that risk.
Yeah.
And all that did was to go, oh, well, obviously I should do this instead, right? And that's what I love about education, is the fact that ultimately, if you do a really good job of educating, and I like to educate around things that I know will be successful as well. So like you have that kind of clear conscience, is that when they come to the conclusion, hopefully, that what you presented to them is right for them, well, you know it's going to work for them too.
Exactly.
You just educated them to get there. You didn't sell them to get there. They sold themselves eventually after they understood it.
Exactly. I don't like to consider myself a salesperson. I like to consider myself, a consultant or a business advisor. I'm just as critical as your attorney or your CPA, because these decisions that you're making for your business are so critically important. And I think when we view ourselves in that vein, brokers looking at yourselves as a true business consultant, you detach from the outcome, because you know that your job is to educate and advise. It's their job to make the decision. You're leading them to the water. They're not buying something that you're selling. To your point, they're selling themselves on that. They're making their decision, and ultimately they're doing business with you, and that's great. But it's your job to give them the buffet, and then they get to decide what they want to get, right?
Yeah, but I mean, there's an artfulness, and really the power is in the ability to take those complex things and distill them down to simple to understand terms and drawings or whatever you use in your process. I've always loved that, right? And that's one thing every once in a while hear somebody say, well, you do a really good job of taking stop loss insurance, which is really complex, and make it simple for somebody that's never heard this to understand. I almost challenge myself as like, okay, now how could you do that for a high school kid? Or how could, how simple could you possibly make this where anybody could understand? Because if everybody at least has a broad-based understanding of self-insurance or captives, then there's more likely eventually going to say, well, I could do that for my own company, right? I want to do that. And I think we've done a disservice to employers broadly, just not training and educating them first. And there's lots of incentives that might shape the way these recommendations are made, which probably we don't have to get into today. But the industry itself has taught people to maybe buy in less than intelligent ways.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's what frustrates me.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and the thing is brokers are paid too much money just to place insurance. And I'm a broker. If you're just placing insurance, you're being overpaid.
Well, that's why we draw a distinction, at least at Pareto, broker consultant. We want to work with consultant. Nothing wrong with a broker, but a broker is a broker, and they broker insurance on behalf of a company. A consultant, we want to work with, who's building a strategy for the long term for that employer to build their business and make them healthy.
And that's worth the money, right? That's worth the money that they're getting paid. You have to think outside the box of just the placement of insurance and transferring risk. How can you make an impact for this business by helping them build out their protocols and procedures, how to help them lower their claims over time, how to retain employees. It's all of these things that we have the ability to affect change within an organization, and that's what the money that we're getting paid is actually well earned for, right?
Well, that's what, when you earn it, when you truly know you earn it, it doesn't feel so bad, even though you might be paid well, right? And I never have a problem with anybody making a great living, just as long as it correlates to the value that they're giving the market. And that's it. That's all anybody, I think, would ask.
ClaimDoc is a medical claim auditing and member advocacy company. We provide fiduciary services to employer-sponsored benefit plans and allowing them to create an environment where we ensure that the benefit plans are being charged on a fair and reasonable basis.
My business is basically people, and it become a real simple transition. We thought it was going to be far more complex. I've saved, we'll say, hundreds of thousands of dollars. I could not say enough about ClaimDoc.
Okay, so let's now zoom out to you building this brand, which I have seen, obviously 10,000 or so of your connections have seen as well. And I think you hinted at it earlier that it might have changed the way that you sell, the way that you prospect. And rather than cold calling so much, maybe you're leveraging kind of the brand that you've built externally to help you as a salesperson. So talk to me about that process. How did this come about, and what are you doing today to have curated this awesome brand?
Yeah, it's been a fun journey, and it's certainly, you're exactly right. It's changed the way in which I sell and have built my business. When I joined MMA, I was under a very strict non-compete. I couldn't touch any of my clients, couldn't talk to them, couldn't tell them I was leaving, but I also couldn't talk to any of the prospective clients that I was currently working on. So an entire pipeline of business just vanished overnight. And so I had to find a way to build a brand new pipeline, develop brand new relationships to rebuild this large book of business. And I made promises to MMA when I joined that I could rebuild my book of business. And so I had to do something different. I couldn't just rely purely on cold calling. There had to be a better way. And that's when I started working with Andy. So I can't take credit for...
we need to make a clip of us like waxing like a kind of poetic about Andy Neary and how much we love what he's done. So Andy enters your world.
Yeah.
Did you seek him out? Did he like recognize you? How did y'all connect originally?
So you had given me Andy's name.
That was it. Okay, yeah.
And I reached out to Andy and I started working with him one-on-one.
Oh, cool.
And what he was saying made a lot of sense, but I don't think I realized the power that it held until I actually got into practice.
So what was your skepticism to start? Because I was skeptical too, and a lot of people are. Where did that come from?
I thought LinkedIn isn't Facebook. LinkedIn isn't Instagram. Like what? Because there were a few people in my network at that time that were kind of doing what I do now, and I always thought it was, the educational content they were putting out was fantastic. And I was impressed with the level of work that probably went into what they were building. But I thought there was absolutely no way that it could be, one, a good use of time, two, something that people wanted to see on LinkedIn. And three, there's no way it could have replaced prospecting, right? It couldn't.
Good old-fashioned sweat equity,
right?
And grit and all that stuff.
Oh yeah. So Andy always says that the strategy for agencies and brokerage firms on sales hasn't changed in the last 50 years.
Yeah.
It's here's a phone book, make this many calls a day. That will inevitably lead to, based on our metrics, you'll get one meeting per week. And if you get one meeting per week, then you'll close 10%, whatever it is, the metrics that they use. That has not changed over the last 50 years. So much has changed in business over the last 50 years that it is laughable that the strategy hasn't shifted as well within brokerage firms. And so it made sense when Andy said, how many people, Madison, can you reach with one phone call? And I said, one.
Oftentimes probably zero, though.
Oftentimes zero. How many people can you reach with a LinkedIn post? And at that time, I think I had like a couple thousand connections maybe. And I was like, well, if it's a really good post, maybe 2,000 people. And he was like, see? If the power is in how many people know you, because they can't buy from you if they don't know you. Yep. And so then we started kind of building out what I wanted my personal brand to be, because when you're doing this and building a brand on social media, you have to be clear and concise about what you want to resonate with your audience.
Yeah.
So I decided that I wanted to be well known for knowing my stuff. I wanted my name to be synonymous with insurance expertise. I wanted people to see how passionate I was about what I do. And I wanted people to know that I take this job very seriously. Yeah. I'm trustworthy. I care about my clients. And so each post that I'm making, I want it to resonate with at least one of those three things. Yep. And since I've done this, the proof is in the pudding. I started getting inbound leads on LinkedIn. How cool is that?
The craziest thing is when somebody comes to you and says, I want a demo or I want a meeting with you. You're like, this is not supposed to work this way, right?
It's crazy. And people are like, what? Prospects are coming to you? And it's a producer's dream to have that happen. I closed $300,000 of business off of a LinkedIn opportunity that would have never happened if I hadn't built the credibility, built the brand, and been consistent with it over the last year.
Well, not to mention when you had that skepticism about, is this a good use of time or is this really part of my job? Well, that $300,000 example, and we don't have to talk about how much of that was your cut, but you literally just proved it's part of your job because you got paid as a result of it and your organization made direct money as a result of that as well. So I think we need to do away with that skepticism altogether. Now, you could sit on social media all day and waste your time. That is absolutely a possibility. But technology, just any type of technology is a tool. And depending on how you use it, could be good or bad or indifferent. So if you're using it wisely and intelligently, it can absolutely supercharge your ability to sell. And I think what you've done is build credibility proactively, which has created inbound interest in you too. So is that happening more frequently now as your network grows and things like that?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And it's funny because it's always the people who don't interact with your content at all.
Oh, yeah.
It's always the people. I mean, you'd be shocked at the ones that are silently watching and reading everything you do. And then they reach out of the blue. Just made a post yesterday about helping a new client with their EMOD factor, which is essentially what governs.
I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I know. I won't get into the details, but it essentially governs how your workers' compensation premium increases or decreases.
What is the E? What does the E stand for?
I don't even know.
Oh, I didn't know if that was like a word, if it was shorthand.
Yeah, it's EMR rating. It's EMR rating, EMOD factor.
Okay.
Yeah, so I actually don't know.
No worries. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I'm like, what does that
you're
mean?
good.
It's a modifier of some sort.
Experience modifier. That's what it is.
XMod. I've heard it said that way.
Yeah,
okay.
Experience modifier. So your loss experience, right?
Okay.
It governs that. And so I made this post about helping a 3 to 5 year strategy that we put in place for this company to lower their experience mod. And a prospect reached out to me and was like, hey, Madison, I'm actually losing business. I'm losing jobs because my experience mod has gotten so bad. It's gotten so high that I'm actually not given the opportunity to bid on these jobs anymore. He was a contractor. And so I would have never gotten that opportunity if I didn't take the time to share that story on LinkedIn, to share, I'm giving free advice. Like I put the strategy and the solution.
Yeah, because you're literally telling what worked, right? I think that's some people are fearful of like revealing their blueprint or their protocol. And it's like, no, if you talk about it, who cares if your competitor sees it? They probably can't replicate it the way that you do it. And second, like you said, a potential buyer is seeing it and go, oh, I could do that for me and I could fix my own problem. I should reach out to Madison. So you got somebody reached out and connected or messaged you afterwards?
So now we have a first meeting, someone I've never talked to before. God knows how long I've been connected with him. And because I was visible and I shared solution that could fit him, I now have an opportunity to solve his problems. And so I think it just shows the power of free education, being visible to your network and being consistent, because it's not going to happen overnight. You can't post once a month and expect that you're going to get the ROI that I've seen. But the opportunity is there. If you look at the leaders that are emerging into these C-suite executive roles now, millennial decision makers make decisions differently.
Okay.
So you have to adjust your strategy to be able to speak their speak and work within the process of how they make decisions. And millennials are on LinkedIn.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, they are.
Well, I spoke to a bunch of millennials, and I think technically I'm a geriatric millennial based on, so I'm one of the oldest millennials you can be, but I spoke to a bunch of younger millennials and probably some Gen Zers as well, and just had kind of a similar conversation. But I'm looking at them and it's like, well, how do I use their language? Or, I mean, I don't even think the language differs. I think you almost, it's almost condescending to assume I have to use different language to speak to them, right? But I think you're right. Like, how would you say or summarize the way that they might buy differently or the way that they interact with you versus somebody that's 65?
So I think traditionally insurance has been purchased, through buddies or mutual friends on a golf course, in the back of a napkin in a bar. It's kind of been a business expense and decision that didn't receive as much weight as maybe like your attorney or your tax advisor. And so people just kind of did business with whoever if they had a family member or buddy. Now it's become such a pain point for decision makers that they're looking for experts. They want to partner with someone that can be an extension of their executive team that understands their business, their industry, and can actually solve problems and bring more value outside of just the pure placement of insurance.
I would never diminish the value of a relationship, but if the relationship is solely the thing that gets you in, it's also going to be the thing that gets you out, right?
Exactly.
And so if you're not continuing to provide value, and I look at what you do and EB producers do as well, you have to continuously be educating yourself and staying out in front of stuff forever, right?
Yeah.
Once you get sort of complacent and forget about a client or don't give as much effort, they're probably moving on to somebody else. Again, if it was solely based on a relationship that's maybe social in nature and that's it, well, if I'm spending millions of dollars on this thing and all you're doing is taking me to golf once a year and you're probably enriching yourself pretty significantly while in the process, sorry, but you're out, right?
Exactly.
So Madison swoops in and gives me a lot of better information. It saves me a ton of money.
Yeah.
Think about that too. Like the value of the business goes up. Every dollar saved on the bottom line based on whatever their margins is, that's now a multiple of value that their business increases in value. Or they hire more people or they invest in a new R&D project.
Yeah.
Like they free up that capital that's being wasted and now they get to use it for their own intentional use instead. And so like if you understand what you're doing for a business, it's hard to like sit back and relax too much. You got to always stay in front and innovate. Now, before we move on, and we'll probably close up the episode, I want to talk about your social process though. Like, so you talked about posting on social media, which is great. You've built an awesome brand. How did you do it though? Like what does posting look like? What's your daily activity, all that? Like maybe communicate some of that.
I have time blocked every day for content creation. So I write every single day. And maybe that's not completing an entire post in a day, but at least it's time that's dedicated in my calendar to thinking, putting pen to paper, and refining my writing, right? So a lot of my content is newsletters, telling stories through LinkedIn posts and videos. And so you have to be honing that craft every single day for one, for you to be able to be consistent, but two, for the quality of the content to be really good. So I'll sit down for 30 minutes each day, write, refine, post, write, refine, post. Yep. And it's kind of just this well-oiled machine. And I have on my notes app on my phone, ideas, stories, things that come to mind if I'm in the shower, working out, whatever it may be, so that I don't lose track of a good idea. And then I'll go to my computer, start writing that out. And then I have a consistent schedule of I'm going to post at this time on this day. And I just keep myself accountable through that. I also just started utilizing personal video content with direct reach out. And that has been really powerful. Okay. So I also lead, outside of just my day-to-day job, I co-lead our GROW initiative within MMA, and that stands for Growth in Resources and Opportunities for Women. Okay. And so I host educational events, networking events for women in leadership in the DFW Metroplex. Okay. And so I'll reach out to women on LinkedIn with a personalized video, welcoming them to join our GROW group, offering them an opportunity to speak on one of our panels, do a keynote speech, tell their story. Yeah. And I'll oftentimes, find with these women on LinkedIn that they've just been on a podcast, and I'll listen to that podcast and I'll tell them, your story about your experience in corporate America is really amazing. I think this needs to be heard by everyone in our group. And in offering them that opportunity has created this amazing ecosystem of new women in my corner, but also opportunities to partner together, right? So it's not insurance, but it can also...
But even taking that step of personalizing a video, and actually Sims Tillerson posted about this morning, and I couldn't agree more. He is curating personal videos or personal messages, verbal, spoken messages, not just written messages, to prospects to say, hey, he's not trying to sell them something. He's like, hey, I noticed you wrote about this or you did this. Here are 3 ideas that you might want to incorporate. And by truly taking the effort to personalize that message, he gets something like a 50% response rate.
Oh, it's huge.
And it's such the antithesis to those spam messages that the second you read them, you know they're spam.
Yeah.
And it's a waste of time. And it's like, who are you even? You didn't even know what you're doing. You don't, like, who's even in charge of this crap? Like, it's so frustrating. And so it's also, I would say, refreshing to have somebody personalize a video or personalize a voice note to you and actually give you some value for free. And you start with that as your initial connection. I want to know you after that.
Yeah, exactly. It's a game changer. And I think you and I were talking about this earlier. In a world now that is so automated and overrun with AI, I mean, you're scrolling through LinkedIn and everything's ChatGPT.
Well, LinkedIn has a new feature that it's embedded AI. Have you seen this?
No.
And I don't know if it's you have to be on a content creator category or whatever. Have you switched your profile?
Yes, I switched, yeah.
So look at the next time you write, at the bottom it'll say, would you like to rewrite this post using AI? Or if you watch a video, you'll see summaries of like, what should I glean from this message or what should I glean from this post? They've embedded their own large language model into writing and also reviewing content. So you don't even have to now watch the video. You can get it summarized by AI. And I look at all that and go, I don't know if I want. I've never once used their AI writing feature. I've never once used ChatGPT to write me a post. Yeah. And I think that's why you and I connected so much. You're a writer at heart. I think I'm a writer at heart as well. I want the words to be mine.
Yeah.
And if it's good or bad, I want it to be my own words that ultimately get put out into the world.
And the coolest thing is when someone recognizes that it's your voice.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I've had colleagues that are definitely utilizing ChatGPT to output their content and have come to me and asked me, how are you doing this? Like, are you using this? What does this look like? Because I feel like when I read your post, it sounds like you. And I'm like, well, because it is me.
Yeah,
it is me. And that's how I speak and that's how I think. And so that's how it comes out. And so, I think there's a happy medium. I think that AI certainly can be used in a way that adds value and doesn't take away from you and your voice and what you're trying to accomplish, but it's a delicate balance.
Well, it's really delicate. And I would think at the very least, if you are using ChatGPT to generate a draft of a post, iterate it a few times, revise it within ChatGPT, and then editorialize it on top of it as you as a human being.
Yeah.
At least add your own voice, because you can detect a lack of humanity in the speech, the speech patterns or the words that are used. And so you can just tell.
Yeah.
So at the very least, at least edit it and put your own words onto it, and that'll make it a little less detectable.
Yeah, I like to think that I adroitly use ChatGPT in ways that adds value. So if I'm writing a newsletter and I need an idea for a clever title to my newsletter, I'll use ChatGPT, right? Or at least I'll get the output and then I'll refine it and turn it into something.
I used it the other day to generate a 10-question multiple choice pop quiz for lasers on a stop loss policy.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, because then it's going to give you the framework, it's going to give you the format A, B, C, D. And what I did is go back and one of the 4, I wrote something stupid or funny that was obviously wrong. And that's how I sort of personalized it. But like, if I ever to sit there and think of what question should I ask about lasers, and then what should the 4 potential right and wrong options be in multiple choice, that would take a really long time. It spit it out within seconds, and I simply just edited it from there. But that's not my voice. That's simply a pop quiz for lasers that'll be applied to everybody in our company.
Yeah.
So there are powerful use cases for it. I just worry that too many people are going to lean on it to be their ghostwriter, and I just think everything's going to end up sounding the same.
So what do you think about, there's all this talk that AI is going to replace the role of the insurance broker. What do you think about that?
I don't know that that's the case. I mean, maybe that's a biased answer. I think the decision-making process is so complex.
Yeah.
And even if there are components of it, and I sit on an advisory board of a company that is looking to leverage AI to like dig into contracts and stuff like that, to look for best practices. So there's use cases inside of what a broker does that might be taken off their plate.
Yeah.
But what always happens is the industry adapts and adds new things under their purview that need to be solved for. And I think human beings will always be involved in that. But there's also think about this. If AI spit out the answer to all your benefits problems, wouldn't you still want to talk to a human being and go, get a second opinion? Are we sure?
Absolutely.
This should be my specific deductible level? Am I sure I should use this TPA? Like, what's your experience been? None of that will ever come out of AI. And so,
agree.
it morphs. We always evolve, but I don't think we get replaced.
I completely agree.
I mean, we're both
My job's
biased.
safe.
Yeah, your job is safe, certainly for the time being. I think the folks that do leverage AI to augment their capacity certainly will be the winners, and there will be some losers that ignore it, and their role gets replaced in the equation.
Certainly. I think there will always be a role for a strategic risk management advisor. I think that you're seeing right now that some brokerage firms are kind of outsourcing those lower level certificate type roles, or maybe the more admin stuff, which of course it makes sense. That can be outsourced and automated. But to your point, I think business owners and executives, even people with their personal insurance, are always going to want to run it by a human being and make sure that they're protected the way that they should be. They're not going to be making these big business decisions off of something that's computed by an AI machine and fully trust that.
Yeah, and I'll give you a specific example that is not exactly a broker, but is related to the conversation we're having. My episode guest that's in the podcast that's out this week is a guy that started or co-founded a company called Sniffle. And they use an AI symptom diagnosis tool they call AI-agnosis. And what this does is you feed it information. I got a tummy ache. It's going to ask you questions back and forth. And it might take 25 questions to distill it down to the AI summary of what your condition is. Then they connect you with a doctor and feed that information to the doctor, who evaluates, sees if he or she agrees, and then ultimately they come up with a diagnosis and prognosis. So it is augmenting that doctor's capacity. It is not replacing a doctor in any way, shape, or form, but I would say it's an activity or a task that can be maybe taken off their plate, or might be slightly done better because there's no human variables introduced to the equation where I'm tired or I'm hungry or I'm distracted. So that AI can say, hey, we believe with 95% confidence you have ESRD, or you have, I don't know, what do you want to call it? Esophageal reflux, whatever, right? And then the doctor goes yes or no on top of that. And so I can see that same thing happening in the brokerage world, where they don't get replaced, but routine, repetitive activities get taken off their plate.
That's genius. I love that.
That's just what I think.
I love that.
What do I know? I don't know. Well, so why don't we do this? Let's finish up the episode, Madison. I appreciate this. It's been really fun.
This has been fun,
I feel like we could talk for another hour and keep it interesting. But why don't we just give us your closing thoughts? You know, whether you want to do future looking about anything you want to talk about. Really, the floor is yours to finish the podcast here.
There's a couple things. I always say this when I do, a speech, a panelist discussion, podcast, whatever it is. Each and every one of us has a story to tell and has value to bring. And so that means visibility is our responsibility. If you know that you can solve a problem, if you can make people feel seen or heard, or if you can create a community that brings value to people, that's your job to share that. And so I think a lot of the discussions that I'm having today, and it sounds like you're having with people as well, is, I want to build a personal brand. I see the value, but I don't know if I really have anything to say or have any value to bring or a story to tell. And that just is categorically untrue. Exactly. Each and every one of us have a unique human experience. We have our why. We have things that we stand for. We have problems that we can solve. And so ultimately, it's our responsibility to share that with people. And having a platform to do that is the first step. And then it just takes consistency, constant work to do that. So that's kind of my advice to people that are maybe on the line of thinking about building a personal brand and considering what that could do for them. My life has completely changed. The proof is in the pudding, not just from a business perspective, but from overall fulfillment in life. I am helping people with so many different things that don't even fall into the category of insurance, because I've built this brand and I've created this community. And then two, I know this podcast is about employee benefits mostly, and most of your listeners are on that side of the house. I think as an industry, we need to do a better job of speaking to each other on both sides. Okay. So I think that we need to come together as property and casualty consultants and employee benefits consultants and come up with a way that we can better understand what each other does.
Yep.
So that when we have this captive audience of our clients and these business owners and executives, if their problem isn't P&C, I need to be able to pivot really quickly to benefits if their problem is benefits, and at least have an understanding of how I can navigate that conversation and then plug you in to solve the problem. Because at the end of the day, our job is to solve problems. It's to be an advocate for these business owners and to be their representation in the insurance world and be that extension of their executive team. And that means we need to be sometimes an inch deep and a mile wide, with that, right? And so I think we need to do a better job of understanding each other and plugging each other in where we can help our clients and prospective clients to solve for issues that may not directly impact us, but make a world of difference for them.
Well, I've got nothing to add to that, nor do I disagree with anything you just said. So why don't we just leave it there? And I'll say again, thanks so much for coming on. I'm sure we'll do this at some point down the road as well. And I'm just eager to watch kind of your progress and growth not online, but of course, in your business as well. So kudos to what you've done. And I'm glad we got connected.
Me too. Thanks so much. This was fun.
Madison. Yeah.